Rock and roll.
That's all we got.
Ready to go.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Special Design Review Committee meeting of June 21st, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order and say that the sole purpose today is to discuss the items related to the 50% schematic design for the new City Hall. And I would like to turn this over to Vernon Girth to start us out.
Thank you, Chairman Jim and Tyler, Brian, and Susan. I wanted to just take a moment to bring you up to date because if you've been following for the last couple years on our progress on City Hall, the project will approach $100 million. And because of that, the board has been very prudent in trying to identify any alternatives, as you may have heard, to reduce the cost. But they recently determined that we're going to redevelop City Hall on Franklin's Historic Square. And that's great news. It's great news for the community. And it'll be a building that'll span the test of time, and your input obviously is critical. And that's why one of the reasons I'm here, because we've incorporated with inflation the way it's been, and the plan to move in City Hall in the early of 2027, we still have got some work to do. And as Jim mentioned, we're at 50% schematic design. And we've got work to do with yourself and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to hone in on what the design looks like at this point. And we've moved along quite a bit with the mass and scale and have some architecture to work through. Also, the board just recently indicated that we're going to include some commercial space, a small amount of commercial space towards the Church Street end of the building facing 3rd Avenue. That's not in what's going to be shared with you this evening because the decision was just recently made. So we'll be bringing that to you. But all that said, your input and guidance is critical so we can get it to the board, come back to you, and then eventually get to the Historic Zoning Commission with a certificate of appropriateness. And I would ask that as we go forward, we think about that so we can stay on schedule. And Anna Ruth and the team knows that the schedule is important, and it obviously helps us control costs. So, thank you.
Thank you. Kelly.
Thank you, Vernon. I'll just add that we have an hour today to be efficient with everyone's time. I'll kind of run the time because we want to spend some time talking about the public square side elevation, and then we want to spend some time talking about the 3rd Avenue elevation. So we'll kind of portion that out, and then at the end, if we need to, we'll come back with about 10 minutes of just refining thoughts. If there's any differences in opinion or things we're trying to get consensus on, we'll come back and go over those at the end. So I will turn it over to Anna Ruth.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm Anna Ruth Kimbrough. As a reminder, I'm the project manager and consultant team representative for this City Hall project. Our whole team is very honored to be a part of this project for such a landmark building in historic downtown Franklin. We're looking forward to continuing our dialogue today and further refining the direction so we can keep on going with the exterior design. So today we are going to start with just a short 10-minute overview of the feedback on the elevation concepts that we got from you, the DRC, and from BOMA on those 4 concept options that we shared with you. And then just review the building's proposed relationship to the immediate downtown context before we open it up for discussion. And then, as Kelly said, we're going to discuss in more detail for about 15 minutes on the public square elevation concept, and then further hone in on the design concepts for 3rd Avenue for about 25 minutes, and then return to any items that we feel need further discussion and direction at the end. So on this slide is an overview of the feedback we received from DRC and from BOMA. As you know, we, the consultant team and staff, surveyed BOMA and DRC members to gather individual feedback on the 4 elevation concepts following that initial elevation study that we shared with you in previous meetings. So the following 5 recurring themes were in the feedback received. I'm going to read them. An arched entrance is preferred facing public square. The use of more stone and architectural detailing gives the building a civic presence while still blending well with the historic buildings on the square and Main Street. More variation in building materials, fenestration, roof parapet, and breaks in the facade are preferred along 3rd Avenue. The courtyard and breezeway provide a nice transition between the 3-story portion of the building and the 2-story portion of the building on 3rd Avenue. And the respondents generally agreed that the design of the 2-story portion of City Hall on 3rd Avenue needs further development. So on this slide, you will see the concept 1 option for the public square elevation. We are sharing this one because the majority of the respondents agreed that this was the favored concept. So we're going to start with this concept for our discussion today and further hone in on the details and your comments and feedback on this elevation. So again, the majority of the respondents were in favor of an arched entry. Many believe that the use of stone and architectural detailing on this concept gives the building more of a civic presence, but does not overshadow the courthouse. And then the arched openings on the 3rd level pay homage to the old City Hall without mimicking. And then many felt that the classical elements such as the pediment and balcony were a nice addition to blend with the architecture of the square and Main Street without overtly copying the courthouse. And then the architectural detailing harmonizes nicely with the historic character of downtown. So on this slide, you'll see 3 concepts for the 3rd Avenue elevation. We included all 3 because there was favorable feedback on all 3, but again, concept 1 was favored by the majority. So on concept 1, which is the one at the top of the slide, the use of more stone to break up the scale and massing of the elevation was responded to favorably. The break and the massing with the courtyard and the breezeway, let me point here, most felt that that was a good break in the height, scale, and massing of the building as the building transitions to 2 stories further down 3rd Avenue. And most favored the arched openings of this courtyard over the square top openings of the other concepts presented. Some in the initial elevation studies, we received a lot of feedback. I don't know if you remember, there were 2 portico elements on the initial study on the public square and the 3rd Avenue side. And many thought that it was confusing if there's some type of entry element on the 3rd Avenue side and wanted to keep the main entrance of public square facing public square. So in this concept 1, some still felt like the use of stone celebrated that to the point where it could be misconstrued as an entrance. So we'll discuss that further when we return to this slide for discussion. And then moving down to concept 3 in the middle of the slide, most prefer the breaks in the parapets, which on the slide, the arrows are pointing to that to help break up the scale and massing of that wall along 3rd Avenue. And again, many thought further development in all concepts of the 2-story portion of City Hall is needed. Many wanted to see more incorporation of stone on concept 3. It was predominantly brick to help break up the massing and scale. And then you'll see on concept 3 and 4, we have a 3rd floor treatment with a balcony here above the boardroom. Some really like that, but we got mixed feedback. Some did not feel it was appropriate. So that's another item we want to discuss further with you today. And then moving down to concept 4 at the bottom of the slide, we got favorable feedback mainly because of the variation in the building materiality on this concept. So again, the use of more stone in combination with brick and the variety of the fenestration openings. So some arched windows along the 3rd floor and then incorporating some stone in this 2-story element. And I'm going to move on to, this is just a slide provided to remind you of our discussions that we've had, actually starting with the site walk, Jim, that you mentioned, and then in our previous meetings of the proposed design's relationship to the immediate context along 3rd. We thought it would be helpful to provide some dimensions. So the 3-story portion of the City Hall building, here where my cursor is in line with the courthouse and the annex across the street, and it's about 144 feet. And then that courtyard break that we saw on the previous slide on the 3rd Avenue elevations is about 27 feet in line with the promenade behind the courthouse. And then that building steps down to 2 stories, as we've seen, to relate to the scale and height, scale, and massing of the context further down 3rd. And this is about an 86-foot long facade that directly relates to the 2 historic structures across the street. And then, as Vernon mentioned, this is labeled potential commercial, but it recently became part of the project. We're going to defer discussion of the commercial portion so we can remain focused on City Hall and really progress those elevations. And then in our next meeting, we'll come back and look at case studies and imagery and some initial design concepts on that. So in your packets, you probably saw all the supplementary information we have. So we have taken photos and some measurements of the neighboring blocks just to relate to the scale of this building to help us discuss lengths of that 3rd Avenue facade in particular, and some site sections and those sorts of things. So we do have these elements available on the PowerPoint if you want to refer to them in your comments. And as Kelly said, we're going to start with the Public Square elevation, spend about 15 minutes, and then move on to 3rd Avenue for 25 minutes, and then return to any items that we feel need further discussion and direction. So, thank you.
Ready?
Yep, ready.
All right. Who wants to comment first on the Public Square elevation? Susan?
I do feel that this works really well. The one thing that I'm concerned about, I think when I would like to see the courthouse and the colors that it is, because right now it seems like it's still a little overpowering. So, and that may not be the case if the courthouse is, in red and then the columns. But I think that I feel like this is going in the right direction.
Brian?
I would echo that. I think it's going in the right direction. The parapet, I think, works well, but if it wasn't there, I think the building could still work very well like it is. So, I mean, if that was a concern by some board members thinking too much like the courthouse, but overall, I like the direction it's going.
Tyler?
Putting my thoughts together here. I like this version. It was probably my favorite of the ones that you had shown before. I think it's going to come down to really much more of the detailing that happens within it, as you know. A big arch like shown on this can come off really cheap if like the window is aluminum storefront or whatever it is. If it's really nicely done, the proportions are right, it can be a big score. But there's usually nothing in between. So it kind of concerns me because I've seen even some of the old precedent images is like aluminum storefront arches on some other buildings we've seen. I was like, oh, please no, not that. But I've seen some that were really well done. I think that one in Birmingham that's not there anymore was really, really beautiful. So I think picking up on some of those details makes it unique enough. I like the parapet. I think it helps in a couple different regards, but I do like that. And depending on which side elevation actually happens, I think there's got to be, if there's archtop windows on that side and that's the scheme you end up with, then some of that's got to play nice with this side too. But go ahead.
Thank you. Mary?
Yeah, I agree about getting the color on the courthouse, and I think I would even put it on that other building too, to kind of give you a better idea. And this was the front that I thought. So
Is that it?
I think the devil's going to be in the details on that big palladium arch window. I think that could come across really bad or good.
I totally agree with that. That's the one thing in the whole front view that was bugging me was that big arch. It just seemed a little overpowering from this perspective. And I guess where it really came home, I was in Charleston about 2 months ago and went to that Four Corners, the government corners, and saw those arched entrances, and that really, they were very dignified but simple to some degree. But I think the detail of what you're showing there will help maybe alleviate some of my concerns. So and I think that's what you're trying to get to. But that was my only thing. The rest of it, I like the parapet. I think it's a nice design element. And I agree with the colors. Show all the colors, and I think that's helpful, not only for us, but especially to Beaumont.
One little, looking at that elevation, obviously this is a hand sketch, but the distance from the peak of the arch to where that kind of cornice starts, it feels like it might be getting too skinny as opposed to the sides. I know that's picky, but it's attached to the windowsill above, but I think when you get into really drawing it, some of those proportions will work themselves out, but we'll get to see it again.
Yeah, I think in general, we hear what you're saying and completely agree about the level of detail, and being at only 50% schematics and having a lot of voices speaking into this, that the detail comes as we focus when we get a big picture idea. And so I think we're working in the right direction here. And we know that, but obviously have not worked out the level of that detail because we needed to get to this big picture consensus first.
But the direction, I think, that you're headed with this is on point. I just think we got to flush out some of that detail in that particular entrance area.
Could I ask you to discuss the balcony, because we've visited that on several occasions with our meetings, and then when we got the feedback on these actual concepts, some on the committee do feel strongly against it. So I just want to.
Is it a usable balcony,
Yes.
or is it just
Yes,
decoration?
it's usable, but it's small. It's just a small kind of step out balcony.
It's
Yeah.
I feel differently about. I'd have to see it in plan. Is that facade? Is it a rooftop deck, which we don't allow, but it could come off that way,
Yes.
whether it is or not. And the Williamson County Courthouse has one, but it doesn't come off as a rooftop deck, but it has roof
Right.
over it. So if it's a shallow, I don't want to say Juliet balcony, but something that perception and scale wise comes off that way, I think it could be okay. But if it's a 12 feet deep
not.
and 20 feet wide, it's like, well, that's an outdoor room. That's a rooftop deck all day. And it just doesn't have any precedent downtown for something right up on the road and up high like
Right.
that.
Yeah,
That's-
I'm not a fan. I think I've said this before. The balcony at the courthouse, if you actually went out on that, is a little bit, it's human scale. I think the balcony on the city hall looks like the emperor's coming out. It's just, to me,
When we elect a new pope.
yeah, in an odd. If it were lower, if it were on the second story, I'd be a fan. But when you look over at the courthouse, that's the part that bugs me. It's more of a social message that bugs me rather than the look of it.
So what was the pushback from others without naming?
That helps. That description from you, Mary, helps because we received some other feedback that was just, I don't feel it's appropriate. And so I hear now the concern about the appropriateness of it and the sense of it.
Not the look. It's really with me, not the look so much.
Right. So I think, I think Brian was getting ready to.
It just may boil down to scale. But I don't have any, I really don't have any issues with the balcony in that location. I don't think you can put it on that second part where the arch is.
Yeah.
It would have to be in that
Well, you can't
location.
put it there because they're going to make the boardroom have a ceiling that's huge, which also I think I don't have any control over the inside. I think that's another, people feel very intimidated coming into the boardroom. So having it very tall, that's none of my business, but
So back to the arch. I just had
that's
a
where I
question
would want it.
about, and this is what we see, the concept of just city hall. And I'm assuming, is that like a canopy? What is that?
It's some type of canopy, but right now it's in sketch form. So we need to get into 3 dimensions and really, like Tyler was saying, work with the proportions of the arch and the space around and base, middle, cap. I mean, there's a lot of refinement to do. But yes, we would want some kind of covering to allow it. And it could be the depth of the arch, and that's just within the depth. We're just not there yet.
And I actually think that could help break up that, rather than looking like a 2-story arch,
Right.
it's more in scale, like
Yes.
with the National
Yes.
Bank of Franklin.
Yes.
I'm not saying that scale. I'm saying it's not a 2-story arch.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah. And that
I
and
just figured that's what it was, but
No, we did break that up intentionally just because we heard you in the last meetings about the 2-story openings in that double height lobby just not being broken up enough and too overwhelming in scale. How are we doing?
We've got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
I think, anybody else got anything? Susan?
I think I would echo Mary's comments on the balcony, that I feel like it's not really a precedent in downtown Franklin to have that sort of balcony. And then I just want to make sure I'm understanding the building itself. Is this stepped out? Okay, so that,
So you see, actually, right now, we could potentially have 2 steps out. So this, yeah. This wall here, can you see where my mouse is? The furthest back wall is in line with the courthouse main wall to complete that edge of the square. And then these either 1 to 2 step outs won't come any further than the portico of the courthouse. So it's going to complete those edges of the square.
So they're pretty subtle.
Yeah, they're subtle. Yeah. Like when you were saying a deep balcony,
Yeah.
that will not happen because just by where the walls.
Maybe it needs to be a low balustrade kind of thing, and it's not accessible, but you get the look. And you've got this cornice over this whole limestone base, all aligned, and maybe that breaks off or something. I don't know. And is 3-tiered. Oh, the same argument we've been kind of making about the parapet having some breaks in it. But to Brian's point, if that city hall becomes like a metal canopy or something, like a steel canopy that's flat roofed, that overlaps those 2 legs, then it starts to break the top from the bottom, and you end up with a real defined kind of 3 layers. And if I like the balustrade, I think it kind of completes the ensemble with the 3 arches. It's like a thing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be accessible, and that means the balustrade can come down in terms of codes, and won't feel like, oh, somebody's going to come out and, you know, do a show up there. Yeah. But I know, functionally speaking, to have a balcony out of that space up there would be quite wonderful. But it's like everybody's saying, I'm not sure it's appropriate on the square. If that rooftop patio were on the back, we
That's
probably
different.
would feel
Yes.
differently about it, because it's just not on the square, looking over
But
the square.
the balustrade detail, yeah.
Yeah, it could be
Yes.
nice.
That was really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, next.
So, Third Avenue.
Okay.
So how does that compare with the length of the Fourth Avenue building?
Let me get to that slide. So, this portion, remember, Mary, is 144 feet. Right here, and then 27 feet, and then 86 feet. And then come over to Fourth Avenue.
There you go.
So these are all comparable to this. We went ahead and did all of them, because, you know, Second Avenue garage is 245 feet. It's
Yeah.
100 feet more than what we're proposing for the 3 stories. Fourth Avenue garage is 130, and the new courthouse is 165, so it's 20 feet longer than what we're proposing for the 3-story portion.
So the historic fabric building, the
This one,
Cork and Cow.
yeah, so it goes 55 south is 93 feet, and then the little annex connector at Merides is 30 feet, and then it goes an additional 125 feet, and then 50 feet,
And ours is going to be,
144 for the
and
three-story.
the combination of all those others are, do you know?
To,
Let's see, 175, 205, 298.
Okay. So 140 feet versus 298.
All right, now show me exactly which ones you talking about. I mean, I counted some of these measurements too, so,
Added up Merides there, that whole,
okay, you're on that side of the street. All right, okay.
it's down.
That to me is the one, the parking garages don't speak to me as something comparable because they've got so many piercings in them. But this does.
So when I say 144 feet, I just want to make sure I'm clear. 144 feet is the 3-story portion. That's the exact length of the actual courthouse and the annex across Third. Then you have the 27-foot break, right, at the courtyard. And then the 2-story portion is the 86.
So you're
86 feet.
you're at 200 and
About 250, 245. something.
245,
Yeah.
and then that whole ensemble is
Well, it's 275 past Merides. So it's comparable to the 275 past Merides.
gotcha.
And I keep looking at the existing city hall laid underneath.
Yeah, it
too,
was
as
like
a pretty good
420
reference.
feet. Yeah,
Yeah.
It was
So
like
this-
420 feet when we
Yeah.
had our walkabout.
So
Okay.
this past the glass connector at Merides is the 275.
Gotcha.
Got it?
I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that comparison.
Yeah.
I do too. That helps.
it's almost exactly double.
Of the 144.
Of the 145.
Yeah, but
The-
it's
the- the
comparable to the full
Yeah.
length. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought it was, to look at the new courthouse just as one building.
Yeah.
To know that
That
that's
helps too.
20 feet longer than only the 3-story portion of City Hall.
Got you.
Okay. All right, but Susan, do you have any comments on the Third Avenue side? Brian,
I don't.
Tyler,
On just the site plan, or are we looking at the
elevation right there.
elevations?
Oh, we're looking at these elevations.
Yeah, you have no comment.
Oh, those elevations.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I
that
was-
was a
I was
side.
shocked.
I'm sorry.
Site plan.
I'm sorry. I was looking at the screen up here.
Start back over with.
Okay, back to the elevations.
Shoot, I thought we were moving on here.
I thought, Lord, do I know these people?
Really. Concept 1 seems to me in keeping with the front elevation. Concept 4, I think the materials seem, there's so much stone, and I think there might be too much. And I personally really like the connector with the arcade. I think that really helps to elevate that whole,
On concept one.
yeah, on
Yes.
Concept 1.
Now,
So concept 1, in the way it relates to the front facade. So if we look to the very left of concept 1, the way the stone wraps around the building on that side, what I like about that is it ties the front of the building to the side of the building as you come around that corner, and actually helps to even break up that facade
Yeah.
even more. So, and I like the use of the break in the building with the 3 windows that are vertical, and even the arch. I think that could help tie it to the front as well. Where the pediment being, I guess that's going to be stone, and then part of that would be some other kind of material inside the pediment. And then is that a stone that we're looking at in the very center that forms the columns?
That's right here, yes.
My only thing about that, when I first looked at this, I kind of thought, well, that pediment looks like it's floating.
I remember your.
And if they could be tied together with maybe the pilasters in between in some kind of stone material and brick at where the windows are to give that contrast, to me, that might actually tie all that together. I do like the connector with the arches and the arcade. I think that is a nice touch. There's something inviting about that. When we talk about are we talking about the building to the right, to the 2-story structure? There's something to me that if it had more of the cap, the stone cap that it shows in concept 3, on that building, it might differentiate it more from the other building too, just as a thought. But overall, I think it's going in a good direction. Oh, I would say, and that would be my preference. Concept 4, I think, is bottom heavy with the stone. I think that's what we're seeing visually on that. Concept 3, concept 3 is nice. The balcony might be a nice touch on that side. I don't know. Maybe I don't know how much it would be used, but there's something kind of I know, like a university kind of look to me about that, or maybe even could be residential in character. And I would like to see something that looks like we say that's a city hall.
go ahead.
There are parts and pieces of each of these that I like, and I think everybody's kind of hitting on a few of the same things. Obviously, turning the corner off the square facade is going to be important. So, like Brian said, I like concept 1 there where that base turns. I like the parapet breaks. I think that helps break this up into some manageable pieces that don't feel like it's one big, huge building, even though it is. That center section, as he was alluding to, it right now what's weird about it to me is it doesn't have like a base under the columns. There's no base tying the columns together, and then there's, if the columns are supposed to be kind of a modern interpretation of a colonnade, then that's great, but they would still have some unifying thing. And again, that probably comes with some more detailing because it's going to touch some type of ground at some point. The break with the triple kind of colonnade there is pretty definitely my preference there. I actually like the massing of concept 1 on the 2-story building, where it's kind of an in-between concept 1 and 3. I think it's got this 2-window bay that's kind of protruded there, what it looks like it is. I think if it were treated a little more like a 3-window bay and had some stone on it, I think that proportion would feel a little better. You're working with a lot of odd numbers, and then all of a sudden that's an even number. So even on the main building, you got 3 on the 2 A and A wing, and then the central section is 5. So to have 2 there is just, I don't know, I'm a little OCD. But I think proportionally, it will be one of those things you go, oh, this feels organized when you get to another odd there, which may put you in with an odd window set out. I don't know, I'll let you figure that out. But a little bit of stone there. I have a similar reaction, but not as strong a one as the front to this roof balcony thing. And what is different on this is this one's covered, right? So that would feel a little different. It doesn't feel like a rooftop deck. It feels like an outdoor terrace. So, and it is on the side street, even though this is obviously a main thoroughfare. It's not on the square. So that's what
Do you
I
see
think.
any problem with that if you incorporated it in concept 1?
No, I think it's
Would it fit okay?
yeah, I think it would sit up there.
It
Right.
could potentially tie the pediment, like Ryan was saying, if
Yeah.
you keep it undercover and not have it look like it's floating.
Yeah.
In that sense.
I just have to see that.
Yeah.
Is that
But
good
it's,
all you
it's
had?
kind of, yeah, a conglomerate of all three. I like the stone portion on concept 4, but I don't like the 4 windows. I
On
definitely,
concept 4.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I like what Brian said about that kind of stone cap. That building may or may not have a parapet. I don't know. I can't tell from this, but it definitely has a cap. And I think that's good to have a little different material. And there may be too much stone on 4 on that second building, but if it goes to 3 bays, it may not be too much stone. That's some of the things I'm picking up on.
Mary?
Well, I think I agree with what people have said. There's a lot on concept 1, going around the corner, the arch connector. Concept 4 just looks more settled to me, even though there's parts of it I don't like. I wish the stone could come down some. I'm not a big fan of the columns and all that, and there's no door. It just kind of drives me crazy. You just don't see that. You don't see a big to-do and no door. So that, I think if you could get somewhere between concept 3 and 4, maybe some stone over that section, but not as heavy-handed as it is, would be my preference. But concept 1 generally. And thank you all for comparing it to something downtown, because that helps.
Well, I prefer of the 3, concept 1, without question. I appreciate the comments about tying that lower stone portion on the left side into the front. I think that's right. I do think the columns could be reworked, and if you add the little balcony there, maybe that works. I just have to see it. Works even better. I also like Brian's comment about somehow adding some minor stone element to that right 2-story level. I think that would really tie it together, but not to the extent of concept 4. I mean, I think that my initial impression of concept 4 is it's too much mass of stone. And concept 3, it's too much mass of brick. But of the 3, I really prefer the concept 1. I think you've got something. I go along with Mary's concept about that area where the columns are not having a door seems a little funny. And there's probably a reason for that, but
First, we heard in the initial elevations is to not make the entry point into the building confusing. So we don't want people going up to openings that look like doors and pulling on doors and saying, I can't get in.
Yeah,
We want City Hall to feel welcoming. So I think something else we can do is with the surrounding hardscape and the landscape is some type of seating area outside that boardroom that complements this stone piece that has maybe even a Franklin City Hall like engraving on the low wall that
I like
that
it.
allows people to gather there. Then it because we're not seeing any kind of landscape or site plan in these yet, and I think seeing that three-dimensionally might help you realize, oh well. It's not a door, but it's a gathering point, and it's celebrated in a different way.
Okay, that makes sense.
So
Okay.
a question I have on that then, because I was assuming, what I was thinking on the concept is this is more like a facing. So a stone facing that has a little projection from the building that is not really like a column that you can actually
Right.
walk into the space.
No.
And to me, that would differentiate whether that's really an entrance or not, to me.
Yeah, if it were just like a balustrade, I mean, not, excuse me, what do you call that going down? I can't, huh? Yes.
And that's what it is.
Is that what it? Well, to me, okay, if you,
Okay.
if you did that and if you killed that stone, calm that top down on one, so it doesn't look so vertical. And I would give another thought on the last part of the building. I would say, do we want them tied together? Because the town is built in pieces. So,
Yeah, but the town is genuine building where buildings are built. It is not buildings made to look like false additions.
right, that's true.
And I think for a city hall, that's particularly important.
Okay.
Well, and the challenge.
Well, you've got
would be-
some stone on it, but I'm saying adding
Yeah.
more.
I think we're gonna detail and we're breaking up massing and the comments y'all have given are great to give us avenues to do that, but it's still one building.
Well, and remember too, we do have the commercial piece coming. And that's even further down. There'll be another break between it. So if
Okay.
this becomes something different, we also have the commercial, and then how are those two going to play with each other? And also, City Hall function still happens in this two-story building. And I have, if it's still the civic building, it's just 2 stories instead of 3 stories. I feel the exterior should
Okay.
speak to what's happening inside the building.
So that's
Well,
good.
so you're saying, are you okay with one?
I do agree, and most of the respondents said more stone.
More
or
stone,
just
okay.
More breaking up of
Okay.
that 2-story piece, and I hear Tyler loud and
Okay.
clear, like the rhythm of threes or odd
Okay.
numbers
Yeah.
needs work,
Yeah.
and then maybe a stone
Okay.
top to it. We need to
Okay.
play with that, but just hearing your comments helps us
Okay.
kind of.
Okay.
But thinking about the order of the building, like we started with this public square.
Right.
And this side responds to what's happening there because
Right.
that's number one, right?
Right.
That's the most important. So this corner, and you guys hit on it, where you turn the corner, that's intentional because you're
Love
going to
it.
see this thing in perspective and you're
You're
going
gonna
to see
see
that
it.
corner. So this responds to that. Now we're working our way down the street. So the 2-story is going to start responding to the 3-story more, but in where we were in the process, not even to 50% SD to get these to you all, we had to make some big moves to get reactions to, and now with the direction you've given us, we can refine a design instead of trying to come up with multiple options that have differences just to be able to get this kind of feedback. So I think this is really helpful towards doing that.
So am I hearing from our group that most everybody thinks the basics are in concept 1 and just need some
Yeah.
work?
Yeah.
That's what I think I've heard.
I think that's what you heard.
Okay. Susan?
Just one comment, and I think that because the way the drawing is, and I realize this is really loose, it's reading like a column, but as plaster, it's a totally different thing. And I really, that I think for me is it's just firming it up that I really prefer that elevation.
I was gonna say, I do appreciate concept 4, kind of some playfulness with the fenestration. We see kind of some mixtures of arches and things, and some of the other concepts seem like just a lot of repeated parts. And I think breaking that up a little bit one of the other things, I too prefer concept one, but concept four, if you look at the corner of the building on the square, you kind of got this first bay that has two pilasters. And, you know, when you come back, it might be good to see, like, okay, if there were stone up to level 2, even though I think that's a double height space, isn't it? Stone up to level 2 there, and then maybe it drops to the windowsill like it does in concept 1, comes across, and there's so many benchmarks we could play with on how high stone goes up. That's a pretty easy thing to add and subtract and just see some versions. Once you guys hone in on here's our elevation, but now we can play with where are these water tables landing, I think could really help. Because there's something charming about the drop in concept 1 and those little hyphens where the break and the parapets are. Those little drops and bringing some of that brick down close to the ground helps us say, oh, here's a section. Here's
Yeah,
a section.
I like it.
That's what bugs everybody about concept 4 is it's like, oh, it really looks like
Yeah.
a huge thing, where concept 1 does a good job of, hey, there's some distinct parts here. It's one building, and I think it would go even further to have a little bit different fenestration here and there, just so everything's not so matchy between the front and back and the ABC sections. Yeah.
Good point. We're right on time. So what's next then?
We're done early.
No.
You know better.
You ever thought about being an architect?
No. I think I want to retire.
Oh, my goodness. Vernon, you got any closing comments?
He's disappointed that he may not
Before
be
you
on
leave
the balcony.
No,
Leave the table.
thank you for your thoughtful input and for all projects, not just City Hall. But as Anna Ruth, Matt, and you know, we've stated, we're trying to bring together the community, but also the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. You know, they're watching the dollars, and we've got some work to do. And as long as we can have that mutual understanding that, you know, we're relying on your expertise, but they're trying to have some input or ownership, which is natural. That's what makes this type of project unique from a private development. And that's what we're trying to really balance to keep the schedule going, because 3 to 4% inflation a year translates into $3 to $4 million if we push it out yet another year. So that's all. But thank you very much. I just appreciate the work Anna Ruth, Matt, and the consultant team's doing, and your input opens my eyes to some things that I don't have that level of expertise.
Well, Anna Ruth and Matt have certainly lived with this
They've
project.
lived with this.
You know, let me just share this real quickly, because I don't think you really know the story of how I ended up in Franklin. Back 17 years ago, in late 2006, Matt and a group from Franklin came to a place called Vernon Hills, Illinois, where I was working. And I was responsible for building a new village hall there. And at the time, I was there about 12 years and looking around, and the group that came, you know, said, well, we have this place in Franklin, and I knew about Franklin, Tennessee, and a job as an assistant city administrator. And lo and behold, I applied in late fall, and in January of 2007, my wife Sherry and our daughter moved here.
Wow.
And it was all because of the city hall. And Matt was one of the people that was on that tour, because I gave tours of the folks that came to see our village hall.
Oh, that's something.
It's
photos to prove it.
Yes, we have photos too. And yeah, it's amazing how things sometimes happen in life. And
Yeah.
but thank you for your input, and we're going to have something special here in a special community.
Exciting.
Okay. Anything else we need to touch on? Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, we're dismissed.